This footage from the University of Calgary demonstrates the degenerative effects of mercury on brain neurons. Very low concentrations of mercury were added to the culture medium for 20 minutes. Over the next 30 minutes, the neurite membrane underwent rapid degeneration, leaving behind the denuded neurofibrils seen here. These findings reveal important visual evidence to how mercury causes neurodegeneration.
Come in close there, and that'll block this leg right there. Oh. I'm sorry.
Concentrations of what the EPA says is safe. Mercury in the past was used as a preservative. The reason it works as a preservative is because it's so cellular toxic. Because if you put mercury in a culture of cells, they will just die. Things don't live in the presence of mercury.
We're now telling our senior citizens to take flu vaccine. Guess what's in flu vaccine? Mercury. Mercury, every year, the senior citizen gets their flu jab. Every year, a bit more toxin is accumulating in their brain. And what are we now getting? An epidemic of dementia.
In the H1N1 swine flu vaccine. We still have traces of it in other vaccines, but for the most part, the lion's share of the mercury is out. And we're still having an increased incidence of autism and chronic disease. So that was pretty easy for the pharmaceutical industry to just go, see, told you, won the mercury. Because it never was just the mercury. It's all the aluminum, it's polysorbate 80, it's a long list of 62 different types of chemicals that are in these vaccines and different combinations of them. It's the latex exposure, it's the gelatin exposure, it's the whole combination of the number of vaccines that children get now. It never was just about the mercury.
The aluminum is used to do a different job. The aluminum is used to basically cause an intense inflammatory reaction at the injection site so that perhaps less disease matter is needed in the vaccine.
Aluminum is a known neurotoxin, and it is often claimed by the regulatory authorities that the amount of aluminum in vaccines is insignificant and that you get more aluminum from food than you get from injection. Well, this kind of reasoning really defies basic toxicological principles. These claims are misleading because we know from research data that only 0.25% of aluminum that we ingest is absorbed into circulation, whereas the aluminum we inject via vaccination is absorbed with 100%. The medical authorities will also say that you can easily excrete aluminum in vaccines, but that claim makes no sense whatsoever because aluminum would be a very lousy adjuvant if it was excreted. The whole premise of an adjuvant is that it stays in your body and it boosts the immune response. And we have now data, human data, that shows that humans retain aluminum from vaccinations up to 8 years following injections. Aluminum in vaccines is attached to an antigen, So it doesn't get readily excreted because it simply doesn't pass through the kidneys. And in fact, research in animal models shows that it's retained. And not only is it retained in the body, but part of the adjuvant aluminum is transported by the macrophages in the brain of animals. And once in the brain, it triggers abnormal autoimmune inflammatory reactions.
Aluminum, when combined with fluoride, forms a very stable complex, aluminum tetrafluoride. And aluminum tetrafluoride is a very good phosphate mimic. So it basically binds to receptors, or it binds to ATP or GTP, where normally a reaction would happen. Aluminum fluoride can actually inhibit these reactions.
Over here. Are you ready? Okay. Oh, baby. Listen. Here we go.
We know that there's a host of children born with smaller or greater propensity of mitochondrial damage, that their mitochondria might be sensitive. But left to their own devices, they would be okay. Okay, so I'm not blaming the children for having these mitochondrial genetic, vulnerabilities, which is what I'm going to call them. But under the influence of all the oxidative damage intracellularly and in the mitochondria, the mitochondria change and the ATP production changes, and the child can become autistic.
I've recently learned that, my child's immune system should never have had any type of live viruses, any vaccines to begin with, but live viruses especially. I believe that the MMR was the tipping point for my child. She had a handful of vaccines at that one time, and the MMR is a live virus.
Sometimes?
Yeah. It's usually the second one that hurts the most.
How was that? What a good boy. Oh, okay. It's okay, baby.
One more.
Oh, there you go. Oh my gosh.
I watched a clip on YouTube, and it was Fran Drescher interviewing Kathleen Sebelius, and Fran Drescher specifically asked her.
Now there's like 18, I think, and I was just wondering whether you had any thoughts on it, or whether you think that there is any kind of awareness raising in the medical community.
We should spread them out, not give them all together, not do them so young. And Kathleen Sebelius said emphatically, we've done numerous of these studies. We have them. The NIH has done this.
Clinical trials testing not only safety of individual vaccines, but safety of vaccines given together, the kind of spacing components, how frequently they have to be given. And
we don't have these studies. And the only study that I could find that came close was a primate study where and I believe it was macaques, that they used macaques and they adjusted the dose for the weight appropriate for the macaque, and these monkeys did not do well with fat.
Baby. Oh my God.
It's all right.
Oh my God.
It's okay.
Baby.
It's all right. Give him a hug. It's okay. He's all right. He will stop in a minute. It's okay. If you feed him, it's breastfeed him, he'll be all right.
Can I feed him?
Yep. Feed him
So
there.
well.
Yeah.
You gotta move, You're all done.
아니 이렇게 잡고 다리 괜찮아 있네. 꽉 잡아야 돼.
She's gonna scream down, okay? Don't let her go.
She's really loud.
That's okay. I'm all done. Just grab Dave's love. I know, that last one.
Tyler, the more you do that, the more it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. Just sit still. Well, Tyler, split sleep still. Okay. Here, give him hug. It's not gonna hurt. Oh, that's I got him. Yeah.